A German shepherd rescued a drowning baby from the river. What happened next left the whole world in tears. Like, share, and comment below where you're watching from. The sun was shining brightly that morning, casting sparkles on the calm river water at Central Park. Parents pushed strollers along the path. Children laughed on the playground, and everything felt perfect. Too perfect. No one could have guessed that in just a few minutes, this peaceful scene would turn into a nightmare that would capture hearts worldwide and leave millions in tears. Sarah Matthews walked slowly along the riverside path, pushing her 6-month-old baby Noah in his blue stroller. Her loyal German shepherd, Max, padded beside them, his ears perked up and his eyes scanning their surroundings. The 3-year-old dog had been acting strange all morning, staying unusually close to Noah's stroller and whining softly every few minutes. "It's okay, boy," Sarah said, reaching down to pat Max's head. But the dog wouldn't settle. His tail was stiff, and his muscles were tense under his thick fur. Sarah had never seen him this way before, not since they had adopted him from the shelter 2 years ago, before Noah was born. The morning air was crisp, and other park-goers smiled as they passed by. An elderly couple stopped to wave at Noah, who giggled and reached out his tiny hands toward them. "What a beautiful baby," the old woman said, her eyes crinkling with joy. "And what a protective dog you have." Sarah smiled proudly. Max had indeed been the perfect family dog, especially since Noah's arrival. He would sleep next to the crib, alert to every tiny sound. Sometimes Sarah would find him gently nudging Noah's toys closer when they rolled away during playtime. "Look, Noah," Sarah pointed to a group of ducks swimming in the river. "Can you see the duckies?" Noah squealed with delight, his blue eyes wide with wonder. The sound of children playing nearby mixed with the gentle splash of water against the riverbank. Sarah reached for her phone to take a picture of Noah watching the ducks. The morning light was perfect, and his expressions were just too precious not to capture. Just as she pulled out her phone, Max started barking. Not his usual friendly bark, but a sharp, urgent sound that made several nearby people jump. "Max, what's wrong?" Sarah looked around, confused. The dog's eyes were fixed on the river, his body trembling with tension. A few people had stopped to stare, and Sarah felt embarrassed by the sudden attention. "Max, quiet!" But Max wouldn't stop. He circled the stroller, whining and barking alternatively, his nails clicking frantically on the concrete path. Sarah had never seen him this agitated. She bent down to check his collar, wondering if something was bothering him. The wind picked up suddenly, rustling through the trees. Leaves swirled around their feet, and the previously calm river began to churn. Sarah shivered, pulling her light jacket closer. "Maybe we should head back," she muttered, more to herself than to Max. That's when it happened. In the split second that Sarah looked down at her phone to check the time, a strong gust of wind caught the stroller's canopy like a sail. The brake wasn't properly set, a detail that would haunt Sarah's nightmares for months to come. The stroller began to roll forward, slowly at first, then picking up speed as it headed toward the river's edge. Max lunged forward, trying to grab the stroller's edge with his teeth, but the wheels were moving too fast. Sarah's head snapped up at the sound of Max's desperate bark, and her heart stopped. "No!" she screamed, but it was too late. The stroller hit the small concrete barrier at the river's edge and tipped forward. Noah's cry pierced the air for a brief, terrible moment before being cut off by the splash of water. Sarah's world stopped turning. Her legs wouldn't move. Her lungs wouldn't work. She could hear screaming. Was it her own voice? People were running, pointing, shouting. Someone yelled, "Call 911!" The river, swollen from recent rains, swirled angrily, carrying her baby away from her. A man nearby stripped off his jacket, ready to jump in, but hesitated at the sight of the rushing water. "The current's too strong," someone shouted. Sarah's legs finally unlocked, and she started running along the riverbank, her vision blurred with tears. But Max didn't hesitate. Before anyone could react, before Sarah could even call his name, the German shepherd launched himself into the river with a powerful leap. The crowd gasped as his strong body cut through the water, swimming with a determination that seemed almost human. Sarah stumbled along the riverbank, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "Please," she whispered, watching Max battle against the current. "Please, please, please." No one who witnessed what happened next would ever forget it. The video would be shared millions of times, bringing tears to eyes across the globe. But in that moment, as Max disappeared under the surface of the churning river, no one knew if this story would end in tragedy or triumph. Time seemed to stop as the crowd watched Max's powerful strokes cutting through the water. The current was stronger than anyone had expected, especially after the heavy rains from the past week. Noah's tiny body was being swept downstream, his light blue onesie barely visible above the churning water. "My baby!" Sarah's scream echoed across the park. Her feet pounded against the riverbank as she ran, stumbling over rocks and roots. Other park-goers ran alongside her, their phones out, recording the terrifying scene. Later, these videos would show the world just how close this story came to tragedy. The water was ice cold from the spring rains. Max's fur was soaked, making each stroke harder as the weight pulled him down. But the loyal dog never slowed, never hesitated. His eyes remained locked on Noah, who was now barely keeping his head above water. A young jogger tried to keep pace with Sarah, his hand on her arm to keep her from falling. "The rescue team is coming," he panted. "They're 5 minutes out." But Sarah knew 5 minutes was too long. In these rushing waters, they had seconds, not minutes. Max was getting closer to Noah now. The crowd held their breath. A mother pulled her own children close, tears streaming down her face as she watched. The wind had picked up even more, whipping Sarah's hair around her face as she ran. "Come on, Max!" someone in the crowd shouted. "You can do it!" The German Shepherd's training kicked in, not from any formal water rescue program, but from countless hours of playing fetch in shallow waters, of watching over Noah since the day Sarah brought him home from the hospital. Max knew what he had to do. Just as Noah's head started to slip under the water, Max reached him. The crowd gasped as they watched what happened next. Instead of trying to grab Noah's clothes with his teeth, which could have hurt the baby or pulled him under, Max made a split-second decision that left even experienced rescue workers amazed. He pushed his body under Noah's, letting the baby's small form slide onto his back. Noah's tiny fingers instinctively gripped Max's thick fur. The dog adjusted his swimming stance, keeping his back as level as possible while paddling toward the shore. Sarah fell to her knees at the riverbank, her hands reaching out toward them. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse from screaming. "Please, God, please!" Max was swimming strongly, fighting against the current with everything he had. Noah was coughing, but holding on. They were almost to the shore, 20 feet, 15 feet, 10 feet. The crowd was cheering now, phones still recording what looked like a miracle in the making, but the river wasn't done with them yet. Without warning, a large wave, caused by debris rushing downstream, slammed into Max's side. The impact separated Noah from Max's back, sending both of them tumbling in the churning water. The cheers turned to screams of horror. "No!" Sarah's cry was primal, filled with a mother's terror. She started to move toward the water, but strong hands held her back. "You can't go in," someone shouted. "The current will take you too." For a heart-stopping moment, neither Max nor Noah was visible. The muddy water swirled and churned, giving no sign of either of them. Sarah's world narrowed to the small patch of river where they had disappeared. Her chest felt like it was being crushed. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Then, a splash. Max's head broke the surface, his eyes wild but determined. He spun in the water, searching. Noah surfaced a few feet away, his little arms flailing. The current was pulling them both toward the middle of the river, where the water moved even faster. The sound of sirens filled the air. Rescue teams were finally arriving, but they were still too far away. This was the moment that would make millions of viewers catch their breath, that would lead to thousands of comments about the unbreakable bond between dogs and their families. Max gathered his remaining strength and lunged through the water toward Noah. The baby was crying now, the sound weak and terrified. The dog's muscles strained with effort, every stroke a battle against the ruthless current. His eyes never left Noah, not even for a second. As Max reached Noah for the second time, the crowd noticed something different about the dog's movements. His strokes were slower, more labored. The weight of his waterlogged fur and the cold water were taking their toll. But still, he fought on. The rescue teams had finally arrived at the riverbank, their orange uniforms bright against the gray sky. 2 rescuers were already inflating a small rescue boat, but their faces showed concern as they watched the rushing water. "This current's too strong for the small craft," one of them shouted over the wind. "We need the helicopter unit." Sarah couldn't take her eyes off her baby and Max. The dog was trying to keep Noah's head above water, but they were both being pulled further downstream. Max's breathing was becoming more labored, visible even from the shore. His powerful legs, which had been cutting through the water so confidently just minutes ago, were now moving with desperate effort. "Hold on, Max!" Sarah screamed, her voice raw with emotion. "Please hold on!" She ran along the muddy riverbank, ignoring the branches that whipped at her face. The crowd followed, their phones still recording every heart-wrenching moment. Later, these videos would show the world the true meaning of loyalty and sacrifice. Noah had stopped crying, which terrified Sarah even more. Her baby boy's face was pale, his lips taking on a bluish tint from the cold water. Max seemed to sense the urgency. With what looked like superhuman, or rather super canine effort, he adjusted his position in the water, trying to push Noah toward a fallen tree that stretched partway into the river. The rescue team leader spotted the same opportunity. "There!" he shouted, pointing at the tree. "If they can reach that branch, we might have a chance." Two rescuers immediately began securing ropes to reach that spot, but everyone knew they wouldn't be ready in time. It all depended on Max. The German Shepherd's training had never covered anything like this. He'd learned to fetch toys from the water, to jump into pools on warm summer days, but nothing had prepared him for fighting against a current that felt like it was trying to tear Noah from his grip. Still, something deeper than training drove him on, the same instinct that had made him sleep beside Noah's crib every night, that had caused him to check on the baby during every nap. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as Max made his move. Using the last reserves of his strength, he pushed through the current, angling toward the fallen tree. The effort was visible in every line of his body, in the way his head barely stayed above water. Noah was clutched against him, small fingers still tangled in Max's wet fur. "Come on, boy," the young jogger who had helped Sarah whispered. "You're almost there." The entire crowd seemed to be holding its breath. Parents hugged their children closer, teenagers lowered their phones, unable to keep recording through their tears. Max was just feet away from the branch now. Sarah could see his eyes, those loyal, determined eyes, fixed on his target. But the current was strongest here, the water swirling in angry eddies around the fallen tree. Max's strength was failing. Everyone could see it in the way his strokes became more erratic, the way he struggled to keep both himself and Noah above water. That's when Max did something that would be replayed millions of times on social media, that would bring tears to the eyes of even the toughest viewers. With the last of his strength, he gave Noah a powerful push toward the branch. The baby's small body was lifted just high enough for his clothes to catch on the rough bark, but the effort cost Max dearly. The current instantly swept the exhausted dog downstream, pulling him under the churning water. Sarah screamed his name, but Max had disappeared beneath the surface. Noah was crying again, his small body secured on the branch but shivering violently in the cold air. The rescue team sprang into action. While two rescuers carefully made their way out on ropes to retrieve Noah, others focused their attention downstream, searching for any sign of Max. Sarah stood frozen, torn between watching her baby being rescued and searching the churning water for their loyal protector. "Please," she prayed, tears streaming down her face. "Please let him be okay. He saved my baby. Please let him be okay." The crowd had gone completely silent, all eyes scanning the river's surface. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Noah was safely in the rescuers' arms now, being rushed toward the waiting ambulance where paramedics stood ready with warm blankets and medical equipment. But Sarah couldn't move from the riverbank. Her baby was safe, a miracle she would thank God for every day of her life. But at what cost? The next few moments would be seared into the memories of everyone present, a testament to the incredible bonds between humans and their four-legged guardians. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting a strange golden light on the river, a dark shape appeared in the water, about 50 yards downstream. "There!" someone shouted, pointing frantically. "I see him!" The rescue team immediately redirected their efforts, two members sprinting along the riverbank with rescue equipment. The shape in the water wasn't moving, just drifting with the current, Max's usually proud form now limp and lifeless. Sarah's heart stopped. The world around her seemed to fade away, the sirens, the shouts, even the sound of her baby crying in the distance. All she could see was Max's body, floating face down in the water that had already tried to take her son. Her legs gave out, and she would have fallen if not for the kind strangers who caught her arms. "Max!" The cry tore from her throat, raw and desperate. "Please, someone help him!" The crowd that had gathered was even larger now, word having spread through the park about the incredible rescue. Phones were still recording, capturing every agonizing moment of what happened next. One of the rescue team members, a young woman named Rachel, was already securing herself to a safety line. "I'm going in," she announced, her voice steady, but her eyes reflecting the urgency of the situation. Without hesitation, she slipped into the cold water, swimming with powerful strokes toward Max's motionless form. The current was still dangerous, but it had begun to slow slightly, as if the river itself was holding its breath. Rachel reached Max in what felt like both an instant and an eternity. Her hands found his fur, and she quickly turned him over, keeping his head above water. The crowd watched in tense silence as she checked for any signs of life. Back on the riverbank, Sarah could barely breathe. The jogger who had helped her earlier was still beside her, his hand on her shoulder offering silent support. Time seemed to stretch like taffy, each second lasting an hour. In the distance, she could hear the paramedics working on Noah, their voices calm and professional as they treated her baby for hypothermia. Rachel's voice cut through the silence. "He's not breathing!" The words hit Sarah like physical blows. The brave dog who had just saved her son's life was slipping away before her eyes. Rachel began swimming back to shore, pulling Max's lifeless body with her. The rescue team was ready, hands reaching out to help as soon as they were within range. They lifted Max onto the riverbank with gentle urgency. His fur was matted and dark with water, his powerful body completely still. Sarah crawled toward him on her hands and knees, not caring about the mud that soaked through her jeans. "Please," she whispered, her hands shaking as she reached for him. "Please, Max, please don't leave us." One of the paramedics rushed over from the ambulance, carrying emergency equipment. He dropped to his knees beside Max and immediately began checking for vital signs. The crowd had formed a circle around them, many with tears streaming down their faces as they watched the drama unfold. Children buried their faces in their parents' clothes, unable to watch what looked like the tragic end to an heroic tale. "Starting compressions," the paramedic announced, his hands pressing rhythmically on Max's chest. Water trickled from Max's mouth with each compression, but there was no other response. Sarah watched through blur of tears as they worked to save her dog, her friend, her baby's guardian angel. Time lost all meaning. The paramedic continued his efforts, his face set in determination. Someone had brought a blanket and draped it over Sarah's shoulders, but she barely noticed. All of her focus was on Max's still face, watching for any sign of life. Then, from the direction of the ambulance, came a sound that would change everything. Noah, wrapped in warm blankets and being monitored by medical equipment, let out a cry. It wasn't his usual cry. It was softer, more like a whimper. But it carried across the suddenly silent crowd and reached Max's ears. What happened next would be played and replayed millions of times on social media. People would argue about whether it was real or edited, but those who were there would never doubt what they saw. Max's ear twitched, just slightly, just once. But it was enough. "Wait," the paramedic said, leaning closer. "I think I felt something." He continued the compressions with renewed energy. Sarah held her breath, her hand resting on Max's wet fur. The crowd leaned forward as one, phones still recording, hearts beating in collective hope. Suddenly, Max's body convulsed. Water gushed from his mouth as he began to cough violently, his legs jerking as life flooded back into them. The paramedic quickly turned him onto his side, helping clear his airways. "That's it, boy," he encouraged, his professional demeanor cracking slightly with emotion. "Come back to us." Sarah was sobbing now, her hands gentle on Max's head as he continued to cough up river water. His eyes were still closed, but his chest was moving. He was breathing. He was alive. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, many wiping tears from their eyes as they watched the miracle unfold. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The paramedics worked quickly, wrapping Max in special thermal blankets to prevent hypothermia. His body temperature had dropped dangerously low during his time in the cold river. Sarah stayed by his side, stroking his wet fur and whispering words of love and gratitude. "We need to get them both to the animal hospital right away." one of the paramedics said, gesturing to the ambulance where Noah was already being treated. The baby needs to go to the children's hospital, but we can take the dog to Metropolitan Animal Emergency Center. It's on the way. Sarah felt torn, her heart pulled in two directions. She needed to be with Noah, but the thought of leaving Max alone after everything he'd done was unbearable. The young jogger who had stayed with her throughout the ordeal stepped forward again. "I can go with Max," he offered. "I'll make sure he's taken care of, and I'll keep you updated on everything." Sarah looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time. His kind eyes were red with tears, and his clothes were muddy from helping on the riverbank. "I'm Tom," he said softly. "I'm a vet tech at Metropolitan, actually. I know the staff there. Your dog will be in good hands, I promise." It felt like another small miracle. Of all the people who could have stopped to help, they had someone with medical training who knew exactly where Max needed to go. Sarah nodded gratefully, unable to speak through her tears. She leaned down to kiss Max's head, her fingers gentle on his cold nose. "You're the bravest boy," she whispered. "The best boy. I'll see you soon, I promise." The crowd parted to make way as the paramedics carefully lifted Max onto a stretcher. His eyes flickered open briefly, searching weakly until they found Sarah. His tail thumped once against the stretcher, just a tiny movement, but enough to bring fresh tears to everyone's eyes. As they loaded Max into one ambulance and Sarah climbed into another with Noah, phones were already uploading videos of the incredible rescue to social media. Within hours, the footage would spread across the internet, touching hearts around the world. Hero Max would become the top trending hashtag on Twitter. At the children's hospital, doctors worked quickly to treat Noah for hypothermia and any other effects of his time in the river. Sarah sat beside his bed, holding his tiny hand and marveling at the miracle of his survival. Her phone buzzed constantly with updates from Tom about Max's condition. "Temperature's coming up slowly but steadily," one text read. "He's getting warmer fluids and antibiotics to prevent pneumonia. Doctor says his vitals are improving." Sarah read each message through tears, sharing them with the nurses who had already become invested in the story. News crews began gathering outside both hospitals. The story of a dog's incredible sacrifice to save his baby brother had captured the public's imagination. Local reporters interviewed witnesses from the park, their voices shaking as they described what they'd seen. "I've never seen anything like it," one elderly man told the cameras, wiping his eyes. "That dog knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just trying to save the baby. He was ready to give his life for that little one. You can't tell me animals don't have souls after seeing something like that." Social media exploded with the story. The videos of Max's rescue went viral, shared millions of times within hours. People around the world watched with tears in their eyes as the brave German Shepherd fought against the current, as he used the last of his strength to save Noah before being swept away himself. The comment sections filled with emotional responses. "I'm crying my eyes out. This is what true love looks like. Dogs are angels on earth. We don't deserve them." Hero isn't a strong enough word for what this brave boy did. Back in the hospital, Noah was responding well to treatment. His body temperature had returned to normal, and the doctors were amazed at how well he was doing. "He's a fighter," one nurse said, smiling as she checked his vitals, "just like his big furry brother." Tom's updates about Max continued to come regularly. The dog was still critical, but stable. The veterinarians were cautiously optimistic, though they warned that the next 24 hours would be crucial. They were concerned about potential lung damage from the water he'd inhaled, but Max's youth and strength were working in his favor. As night fell, Sarah sat in Noah's hospital room, her baby sleeping peacefully in the small medical crib. Her phone showed a photo Tom had just sent. Max in his hospital bed, wrapped in warming blankets with various tubes and monitors attached to him. Despite everything he'd been through, despite his own pain and exhaustion, Max's eyes were open in the photo, and he appeared to be trying to get up. "He keeps trying to stand," Tom texted. "The nurses say he's agitated and keeps looking around. I think he's searching for Noah and you. We had to give him a mild sedative to keep him from hurting himself." Sarah's heart ached reading those words. Even now, even after nearly dying, Max was still trying to protect his family. She watched Noah's tiny chest rise and fall, remembering how close she had come to losing everything today. The steady beeping of the hospital monitors created a rhythmic backdrop to her thoughts. The night shift nurse, Linda, came in to check Noah's vitals again. She smiled warmly at Sarah, her experienced eyes taking in the mother's exhausted posture. "You should try to get some rest," she said gently. "Your little one is doing great. His temperature is completely normal now." Sarah nodded, but she couldn't imagine sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the stroller rolling into the river, heard the splash that had changed their lives forever. "I keep thinking about what could have happened," she whispered, her voice breaking. "If Max hadn't been there." Linda sat down beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "But he was there," she said firmly. "And from what I've seen on the news, that dog of yours is quite the fighter. Have you seen the latest coverage?" Sarah shook her head. She'd been too focused on Noah and the updates from Tom to pay attention to the media storm that was building. Linda pulled out her tablet and showed her the evening news coverage. The story had gone national, with major networks picking it up. The video of Max's rescue had been viewed over 10 million times in just a few hours. Animal rights organizations were calling Max a hero, using his story to demonstrate the incredible emotional intelligence and loyalty of dogs. The local government had already announced plans to honor Max with a Civilian Bravery Award, the first time it would be given to an animal. But what caught Sarah's attention most was the flood of support pouring in from around the world. A GoFundMe page, set up by one of the witnesses from the park, had already raised over $50,000 to cover both Noah's and Max's medical expenses. People were sharing their own stories of how dogs had saved their lives or the lives of their loved ones. The hashtag #BeMoreLikeMax was trending, with people posting photos of their own dogs and celebrating the special bond between humans and their canine companions. Around midnight, Tom sent another update that made Sarah's breath catch. "Max is more alert now," he wrote. "The vet did another chest x-ray. His lungs are clearer than expected, but there's still some fluid. They're worried about pneumonia developing. His temperature is better, but he's still not out of danger." Sarah found herself praying again, something she hadn't done regularly since she was a child. "Please," she whispered, looking at Noah's peaceful face. "Please let him be okay. He saved my baby. He has to be okay." As if in response to her prayers, her phone buzzed with another message from Tom. This one included a video. With trembling fingers, Sarah pressed play. The short clip showed Max, still connected to various monitors, but with his head raised. He was looking directly at Tom's phone, and when Tom said, "Look who it is, Max. It's your mom," Zerenia Max's tail began to wag weakly. Linda, who had insisted on being present for the reunion, helped Tom carefully maneuver the wheelchair next to the crib. Noah immediately reached out his tiny hands toward Max, making happy gurgling sounds. The dog whined softly, straining forward until his nose could just touch Noah's fingers through the crib rails. The room was silent except for the sound of sniffling, not just from Sarah, Tom, and Linda, but from the dozens of hospital staff members watching from the doorway. Someone was live streaming the reunion on social media, where hundreds of thousands of people were watching in real time, their hearts touched by this extraordinary demonstration of love and loyalty. Max's monitors showed his vital signs growing stronger by the minute as he watched over Noah. The baby had grabbed onto one of Max's ears through the crib rails and was holding it gently, a gesture that was so familiar, so normal, it made Sarah's heart ache. This was how she often found them at home, Noah holding Max's ear like a security blanket while the dog patiently watched over him. "The bond between them," Linda said quietly, wiping her eyes. "I've never seen anything like it. This isn't just a dog and a baby. This is pure love." Tom checked Max's vitals and shook his head in amazement. "Everything's improving just from being near Noah. His oxygen levels, his heart rate, it's all better than it's been since the rescue. It's like being with Noah is the medicine he needed most." The next few days brought a series of small miracles that kept the world watching and hoping. The hospital made special arrangements for Max to stay in Noah's room, setting up a comfortable bed next to the crib. The viral story had touched so many hearts that donations of pet supplies, baby items, and medical equipment poured in from around the world. The city's mayor visited the hospital, presenting Max with a special Civilian Bravery Medal in a ceremony that was broadcast live on national television. The German Shepherd sat proudly in his wheelchair, wearing a specially made blue collar that matched the medal's ribbon. Noah watched from his crib, clapping his tiny hands as the mayor placed the medal around Max's neck. "This dog," the mayor said, his voice thick with emotion, "represents the very best of what we hope to see in our community. His selfless act of bravery, his unwavering loyalty, and his incredible bond with this child remind us all of the extraordinary capacity for love that exists in this world. Sarah found herself overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Letters and cards arrived by the hundreds, many from parents whose own children had been saved by dogs, or from rescue dog organizations sharing similar stories of canine heroism. Children sent drawings of Max, depicting him with a superhero, cape, or angel wings, their innocent artwork capturing the magic of what had happened that day at the river. One morning, about a week after the rescue, Sarah woke up in the hospital room's recliner to find something extraordinary. Max, who had been gradually regaining his strength, was standing on his own beside Noah's crib. The IV had been removed the day before, and though he was still connected to monitoring equipment, he had managed to climb out of his bed to resume his self-appointed guard duty. "Oh, Max," Sarah whispered, not wanting to startle him. The dog turned his head slightly to acknowledge her, but kept his primary focus on Noah. His legs trembled slightly with the effort of standing, but his eyes were clear and alert. The monitors showed his vital signs were stable. Better than stable, actually. They were almost back to normal. Dr. Peterson, Noah's pediatrician, came in for morning rounds and smiled at the sight. "Now, that's what I call dedication," she said softly. "You know, we've been studying cases of animal-assisted therapy for years, but what we're seeing here, it's beyond anything in the medical literature. The way they help each other heal, it's remarkable." The doctor's words would prove prophetic. Over the next few days, both patients made extraordinary progress. Noah, who had shown no lasting effects from his near drowning, was cleared for discharge. Max's recovery, while slower, was equally impressive. His lung function improved daily, and his strength returned faster than anyone had expected. The media continued to follow their story, but something had changed in the coverage. What had started as a dramatic rescue story had evolved into something deeper, a testament to the profound connections possible between humans and animals. Child psychology experts appeared on news programs, discussing the impact of such early bonds on childhood development. Animal behaviorists analyzed Max's split-second decisions during the rescue, pointing out the incredible intelligence and emotional awareness he had displayed. Tom, who had become like family during their hospital stay, helped coordinate Max's ongoing care. He worked with the hospital administration to arrange for Max to receive physical therapy in the same facility where Noah would have his follow-up checkups. This way, he explained, they never have to be separated during recovery. The day they were finally cleared to go home was met with both excitement and trepidation. Sarah had spent hours preparing their house, setting up a special bed for Max in Noah's room, just like the arrangement they'd had in the hospital. The GoFundMe campaign had raised enough money to cover not just their medical expenses, but also to install security cameras and a new, safer fence around their yard. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Sarah was struck by how different everything felt. The world looked the same. The sun still shone, the trees still swayed in the breeze, but something fundamental had shifted. The bond between Max and Noah, already strong before the accident, had been transformed into something almost magical. Max walked slowly but steadily to the car, his new metal catching the sunlight. Noah, secure in his new car seat, donated by a local baby store, reached out toward Max as Sarah buckled him in. The dog immediately placed himself as close as possible to the baby's seat, his position protective but gentle. The drive home was filled with a mixture of emotions. Every few minutes, Sarah checked her rearview mirror to see Max watching over Noah, his eyes never leaving the baby for more than a moment. The streets they drove through were lined with welcome home signs. News of their release had spread through the community, and people wanted to show their support. As they turned onto their street, Sarah gasped. Their neighbors had decorated the entire block with blue and white balloons, the colors of Max's bravery medal. A large banner stretched across their front yard read, "Welcome Home Heroes." Children stood in their yards holding handmade signs, some dressed in superhero capes in honor of Max. Tom's car pulled up behind them. He had insisted on helping them get settled at home. As Sarah parked in the driveway, she saw Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor, wiping tears from her eyes as she walked over with a homemade casserole. "You don't need to worry about cooking for a while, dear," she said. "The whole neighborhood has signed up to bring you meals." The inside of their house had been transformed too. While they were in the hospital, their neighbors had worked together to make everything safer and more comfortable. New baby gates had been installed, the floors had been cleaned and sanitized, and someone had even set up a specialized dog bed in Noah's room that would allow Max to see the crib clearly while resting his healing body. The most touching addition was a wall of framed photographs in the living room. Someone had collected images from the news coverage and social media, pictures of Max swimming to save Noah, the emotional rescue, their reunion at the hospital, and the medal ceremony. Below these hung dozens of children's drawings and letters from around the world. As they settled in, Sarah noticed how differently Max moved through the house. Before the accident, he had been energetic, playful, sometimes even a bit clumsy in his enthusiasm. Now, despite still recovering his strength, his movements were purposeful and graceful. He checked each room methodically before allowing Noah to enter, a new behavior that showed how the experience had changed him. That first evening home brought another moment that would be shared thousands of times on social media. As Sarah prepared to give Noah his bath, the first one since the accident, she found herself hesitating, her hands shaking slightly as she tested the water temperature. The sound of running water brought back memories of that terrible day at the river. Max sensed her anxiety. He gently nudged her aside with his nose and began a careful inspection of the bathtub. He placed one paw in the water, tested the depth, and then looked up at Sarah with clear, calm eyes. It was as if he was saying, "It's safe. I'll make sure of it." Tom, who had stayed to help with the settling in process, recorded the moment on his phone. "This is incredible," he whispered. "He's not just protecting Noah anymore. He's helping you heal too, Sarah. He knows you're scared, and he's showing you it's okay." The bath went smoothly, with Max lying beside the tub, his head resting on the edge where he could watch every movement. Noah splashed happily, completely at ease because Max was there. Sarah found her fear easing as she watched them together, realizing that while the accident had been traumatic, it had also given them something precious, an even deeper bond of trust and love. Later that night, after Noah was asleep in his crib, Sarah sat on the floor next to Max's new bed, running her fingers through his fur. The dog was tired from the day's activities, but refused to sleep until he had assured himself that everything in the house was secure. "You know," Sarah said softly, "I always knew you were special, Max. From the day I adopted you, I could see something in your eyes. This wisdom, this incredible capacity for love. But what you did that day at the river, you didn't just save Noah's life. You showed the whole world what pure, unconditional love looks like." Max's tail thumped gently against his bed, and he leaned his head against Sarah's knee. Through the baby monitor, they could hear Noah's peaceful breathing. The house was quiet, safe, filled with the kind of peace that comes from knowing you're protected by someone who would give everything to keep you safe. 1 year later, the story of Max's heroic rescue was still touching hearts around the world. The video had been viewed over 100 million times, inspiring countless families to adopt rescue dogs and sparking important conversations about the extraordinary emotional intelligence of animals. The anniversary of the rescue brought news crews back to Sarah's house, eager to see how the remarkable pair was doing. They found a transformed home and family. Noah, now a toddling 18-month-old, was inseparable from his furry guardian. Max had made a complete recovery, though he now bore a small scar on his chest, a reminder of that day's events that the vet said would always remain. The most striking change was in how Max watched over Noah. He had developed an uncanny ability to anticipate potential dangers. When Noah started learning to walk, Max would position himself on the side where the baby might fall, providing a steady support. During trips to the park, yes, even back to that same park, Max would gently herd Noah away from the river's edge, his body always between the water and his small charge. Tom, who had remained a close friend of the family, had helped document these behaviors for a study on canine intelligence and emotional bonds. "What we're seeing here goes beyond normal protective instincts," he explained to the news crew. "Max isn't just guarding Noah. He's teaching him, supporting him, helping him learn about his world in a way that's both protective and nurturing." The mayor's office had turned Max's story into the centerpiece of a new water safety campaign for families. Signs along the river now featured Max's image, reminding parents to secure strollers and keep children away from the water's edge. The local animal shelter had named their new rehabilitation center after Max, specializing in helping traumatized dogs learn to trust and love again. Sarah had used part of the donation money to start a foundation that helped match rescue dogs with families who had young children, believing that somewhere out there were other dogs with the same capacity for love and protection that Max had shown. The foundation also provided training for both dogs and families, ensuring safe and lasting bonds. On the actual anniversary of the rescue, Sarah took Max and Noah back to the park for a special ceremony. The city had installed a small bronze statue near the spot where Max had jumped into the river. The statue showed a German shepherd swimming with a baby on its back, a permanent reminder of that day's miracle. As they stood near the statue, Noah held onto Max's fur with one hand and Sarah's fingers with the other, his little legs steady now as he walked between them. Max's posture was alert but relaxed, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings, but his tail wagging gently. He wore his bravery medal, polished for the occasion, though Sarah often said the real medal was the love that shone in his eyes every time he looked at Noah. "You know," Sarah told the assembled crowd, her voice strong with emotion, "people often ask me if I believe in guardian angels. I always tell them the same thing. I don't need to believe in angels, because I've seen one in action. He has 4 paws, a furry tail, and a heart bigger than any I've ever known." That evening, after the ceremonies and interviews were done, Sarah sat on their porch swing, watching Noah play in the yard with Max. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, much like it had on that fateful day a year ago. But now, instead of fear and tragedy, the scene was filled with joy and laughter. Noah would throw his ball, and Max would fetch it, always bringing it back with gentle care. When Noah got tired and sat down in the grass, Max immediately lay beside him, creating a furry backrest for the toddler to lean against. Their synchronized movements, the way they communicated without words, the absolute trust between them. It was beautiful to watch. Sarah took out her phone and recorded a short video of them playing. She posted it to social media with a simple caption that would touch hearts around the world one more time. 1 year ago today, a dog proved that love knows no limits, that courage comes in all forms, and that sometimes our angels walk beside us on 4 legs. Max didn't just save Noah's life that day, he showed us all what it means to love unconditionally. Every day since then has been a gift, a reminder that miracles do happen, and they sometimes come with fur and a wagging tail. Never forget, Max, the hero, unconditional love. As the sun set on another peaceful day, Max led Noah back to the porch, both of them tired from playing, but wearing matching expressions of contentment. Sarah hugged them both, breathing in the simple joy of being together. The river might have tried to tear them apart, but love, pure, unconditional, 4-legged love, had made them stronger than ever.